I do.
All right, we'll wait for our stragglers to sneak on in. I think we just got maybe one more. So welcome everyone to the VIP Intimate Exclusive chat tonight with Mark Oshiro and Julian Winters and Pettiness. So how are you guys doing this fine evening, afternoon? Evening.
I drove here.
Excellent, yes, round of applause.
If you follow me on Twitter, I've never had a driver's license my entire life, and I decided to learn how to drive in Atlanta.
Okay.
So I feel like it's like a 301 level class for someone who's in kindergarten.
You can just drive like a spaceship now.
I could, and I probably drive better than most of the people here who all learn how to drive in the school of Mario Kart.
Oh yeah.
It's a lot. But I'm good. I'm very excited. This is also, thank you for making this happen. This is technically my first event since moving here.
Oh, yeah, it is. Well, welcome.
Congratulations. I moved here last year from Brooklyn, and I just renewed my lease, so I'm staying. I love
Yes!
I love it here.
Very
How are
good.
you, Julian? I miss you.
I've missed you too. I've missed being out here. I haven't been here since Nick Stone had Odd One Out. So it's been a while since I've been out here. So it's great to be out here. And I like that I wasn't sweating walking from the car to the library. It was nice because all week, no matter where I've gone, before I even get inside, I was soaked. So that's nice.
Devil's armpit summer, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm just happy to be here, happy to facilitate. Oh my God. So, shall we get started?
Yes.
All right, so we are going to be playing a game of Jeopardy, but no one gets points.
This is good because I feel like Mark is very competitive. Well, no, I know. For like game night.
I'm very competitive.
And so this is good that no one's getting points because I am not competitive, but I am also a very sore loser.
I actually like that none of us are getting points because this feels like a great metaphor for American capitalism, which is we're going to do a bunch of work and none of it's going to matter in the end.
Speak more on that, please.
No. Explain our
yes.
little categories.
So we have just 3 little categories. So the first is by the pen, which will be about your writing, how you go about it, that kind of thing. The second one is blind date, a little more personal questions, just to try to get to know you as people more.
So I won't have a significant other by the time I leave.
I don't know. I'll have to wait and see.
Okay.
Plenty of people know.
Not with that attitude.
I'm just saying it could be an option.
The summer of yes, right?
Yes.
That's what we're doing?
I mean, yes.
There we go. And then we have Dear Dorothy, which is a bit of a deep cut. But so back in Hollywood in the 40s, you would say you were a friend of Dorothy if you were gay. And then kind of mashing that up with like the Dear Editor kind of thing from newspapers. So it is kind of both writing and just kind of queer intersectional identity advice column.
It's I will say, because I feel like my queer coming of age was in college, and it was in Long Beach, and everyone in Long Beach, California, still uses Friends of Dorothy.
I love that.
Which I love that they kept.
I want it to be a thing.
Forever. It's
Yes.
so great.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's great too because straight people, if there are any here, are there any representatives from the straight?
Any ambassadors? Yes. Oh, we have quite a few.
Yes. Most of the time, you don't understand it, and it's cool to have like a term that
We'll have secret language.
Yeah,
you
yes.
know.
But now we know.
I mean, you can't go
Well, will you
sharing.
remember it by the end?
Yeah, you'll forget. We're going to talk about so many things. So we're just going to trade off back and forth. You can each pick your category and your number, and we'll just go from there.
Do you want to go first?
No, you should go first because you're closer to the board.
Okay.
There we go.
That's a logic that I went with. But go ahead.
I will go with it. I'm gonna go with by the pen for 300.
Oh my gosh. Big money, big money, big
Yes.
money.
It's money.
No whammies, no whammies.
So,
Well,
Never mind.
jump right into it with that one.
Oh my God!
But no, this is good. We can start heavy and then we can go lighter.
I was told the deep category was Dear Dorothy. I was
Yeah.
not told by the pen was gonna be deep.
Let me expand this slightly for you. Since you picked it, you have to answer it first.
What?
Do you feel like you write trauma into your books?
I feel like
Because we all know I do. But
I write trauma adjacent into my books.
Explain. What does that mean?
I don't shy away from the tough topics. At the same time, I am not in your face with them. I kind of slip them in there so that the people who know, and they feel it. But the way honestly, I feel like a lot of my teen years and a lot of my early 20s were a very hopeless stage. So the way that I combat writing the trauma in there is to kind of think about what would I want, what I wanted for myself at that time. And since I didn't have it, how can I gift that to the reader? How can I gift that to a young reader who needs to know that there is hope? Who needs to know that you don't always have to go through the most difficult situation to reach the other side. And so that's how I kind of write it in there, is what I would have wanted for myself at that time. And yeah, but I don't shy away from it. At the same time, I'm not like 100,000 words about, how I was called, a slur in high school. But I will dip and dive into it.
Yeah, I do feel like you have a soft touch to it that kind of, as you said, like speaks to those who are going to see it for what it really truly is, and lets them see that kind of reflection of themselves in the page.
Well, on the other side of the coin,
I'm only laughing because you were like, I didn't write 100,000 words about being called a slur in high school. Here's 87,000 words about being called a slur in middle school. In the Insiders. I do write very specifically about trauma in a lot of my books. Even the ones like the Star Wars book is about trauma. The Percy Jackson book is about trauma.
Not all of Star Wars about trauma.
Not my story. It somehow ends up being that way. And I think of it as how, whatever I'm going to write, I don't want to shy away from it, but I always think of it as the light at the end of the tunnel. Thinking very similarly to you of instances where I didn't have a light at the end of the tunnel when I was younger. And so that can take the form of familial relationships, both blood family and found family. Found family is like one of my favorite tropes in the world because for many of us who are queer, that is how we survived, is we had to make our own family. So that theme appears multiple times throughout my work. It can take the form of community. I love writing about finding other people who have a shared experience because some, like we make a lot of us who are friends make jokes about trauma bonding, but like it is a real thing of like, here's this thing that I went through that I thought I was the only person in the world who experienced it, and getting to find someone else where you were not. This is actually a thing that is very common. So yeah, the way I try to stray from hopelessness is always thinking of the light in the end of the tunnel, and where does that appear in the structure of the body, of my specific work. Yeah.
Very nice, yeah. I guess to expand on that a little bit, and this is a very heady, big world question, but why do you think that trauma finds a way into pretty much everything we write? Because I don't think I've ever read anything that doesn't have at least one little hint of some form of trauma, besides it just being, that's humanity.
What, like in our work or in general?
Yeah, in your work or in general.
In my work it's because I'm mentally ill, so, yay, it's fun. No, I do it too because I think especially after writing Anger is a Gift and getting to meet other kids and having kids say, I've never read a character with a panic attack in a book. And that sense of, like, we all can talk a big game about representation, but there is something just so amazing about having someone come to you and say, your work spoke to me in this way, where I felt like you were only speaking to me. And so I also tend to write very specific books. Like I have one sort of experience or one sort of person in mind. And so I know that the trade-off is that there are a lot of people who read it and are like, I don't relate to this. This isn't my struggle. This isn't what I've been through. And I'm okay with that because I'm writing for that one kid. I'm writing for like the kid that I always tell the story about this kid I met at a school visit who Anger is a Gift was the first book he ever read cover to cover. Like he could never finish a book. And also I was like, please read a shorter book next time. But the thing he said to me after, and I'll never forget it, he said, I didn't know we got to write. And he was this young Latino kid, and it just was like, it was one of those moments where I just had to be like, excuse me, and then like go off and cry, because like that's huge, like that's such an immense thing to hear. So I think it's always going to appear in my work in some form or another, because I am still looking for that connection. I think of young me and now 38-year-old me, I'm still looking for that connection with people who have experienced difficult things in life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I feel like because we want to acknowledge it. Like, we don't want to keep on keeping it in the dark. Oh no, it never happened. I'm okay. It never existed. So we as writers want to acknowledge it, but also we want people to be okay with acknowledging their own trauma. And I think that's why it gets built into so many things that you see, because we want people to know that yes, this thing happened, and you can acknowledge it, and you can come out on the other side healthy and happy, or whatever place that you need to be to continue to exist. And so I think that's like one of the reasons, especially when you're talking about queer stories, when you're talking about stories from people of color. Like, we're so good at not acknowledging these things and not talking about it within our communities or within our families, that we kind of need that on the page, on the screen, wherever it is, so that we know that, okay, yeah, it happened. Mm-hmm. And it's totally okay if you're not okay at this point, but you still need to know that it happened, and it happened to me too, and we're going to be okay.
Very nice. Thank you for sharing that. Oh.
It's my turn to choose.
It is your turn to choose.
Please do something else.
Boy. Let's do blind date for 100.
Okay. How do you express yourself outside of your writing?
Music. Actually, if I was not a writer, I'd be a musician. That would be my whole thing. I was in bands when I was in my 20s, or my teenagers in my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
I still play music almost every single day. It's like my actual obsession. Like, I could talk about books and writing or whatever, but you know that whole meme of like, what could you give a TED Talk on?
Mm-hmm.
I could literally give you a TED Talk on like 30 different genres of music you've never heard about. Like, oh my God, don't get me started. And I mean, and I vary all over the place musical tastes. Like, you know, I could give you like the life history of Patti LuPone, while also telling you how the 1996 Essex, New Jersey band Dillinger Escape Plan reinvented music, which none of you probably even heard of that band. Like, and that is okay. Thank you. We'll talk. Okay. Music. So music, I would say How do we express it? Yeah, music. It's music.
Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
This is why I'm single. I don't know. What do you mean? I don't know. I used to do. I think I did a lot of things growing up to try to figure out what was my thing, and then when I found writing, it was my thing. Mm-hmm. So, how do I express myself? I think, and I don't know if this really counts, but I am that friend. Like, I am that friend who's trying to be the number one friend. So the way I express myself outside of writing is I am texting and checking on you, and I'm sending you this, and I'm randomly sending you cupcakes because today is Wednesday, or I'm showing up at, whatever your kid is doing, and I am just always trying to be the number one. This is where the competitive side comes out. I'm always trying to be like the number one friend, but that's also how I express myself, because I get to use my humor and I don't know, my affectionate side in different ways through friendship. So that's how I express myself.
I don't think that counts.
That is a great answer.
That is.
Somebody, if you're recording, put that on the internet. Okay.
We'll add it to your profile.
Thanks.
All right, back to you.
Oh, it's my turn. Oh my gosh. I am staying away from Dear Dorothy. I wanted to do.
Was it by the pen that got us?
Yes, but I feel like if that's what got us, then Dear Dorothy is going to end us. So I am going to go with Blind Date for 300.
300, you got it. What drives or ignites your passion?
Tell us, Julian. Oh, I did not need to do that soldier.
That's fine.
Just very yourself. That's fine.
Yeah. What drives or ignites my passion? Honestly, so when I first started writing, it was, I told my publisher, I was like, I just want to sell 5 books to 5 queer teens who need to read this. And I'll be good. Mission accomplished. I'm fade into the void. But really, since then, the response and the emails and the DMs, all the different ways that people have told me how much my books have meant has continued to inspire me, because I kind of feel like once you get the ability to reach people, like that itch never goes away. Like you want it to continue. You want to continue to help people no matter where they are. So that's what really drives me. I wish I could say it's a financial thing, but publishing doesn't pay well. So people went through growing up, and so I'm just going to continue to write stories to make them feel like they're valid and they're worthy.
That's not, I can't go up with that.
Yes,
okay,
you
so
can.
all of that, and pettiness. I'm a very like spiritually petty person. Shout out to my petty queen, Danielle Clayton, who I know I'm going to send this to later. I think about, literally my answer would have been basically what you gave, like I'm doing this for other kids, I'm thinking of myself and what I wish I had, all of that stuff. So let me also add that like I think of like my middle school bully and how I basically wrote him into The Insiders, which is a fantastically selling book that is reaching all of these kids. And what is he doing? He's in jail right now. I am very pro-abolition. Jail should not exist. That person belongs in jail. Anyway, and so that fuels me. Like I just am like, oh, you are not making it in life, and I am, and you tried to ruin my life. Like I love that. I love salty, white tears, 1-star Goodreads reviews. I get a lot of them. Remember my favorite, the last review I saw on Goodreads, which was, we're in
2022.
About 4.5 years ago, was for Anger as a Gift. It was a 1-star review, which was, this book is written beautifully, the characters are wonderful, it's a fantastic story. 1 star because Mark didn't teach me enough about how to stop racism.
What?
You didn't know you were supposed to do that when you wrote that book?
No. I did not. And I remember reading that, and it was, I don't read Goodreads for anxiety reasons, but I actually was glad that that was the last one I read, because it just reminds you that, like, first of all, Goodreads is not for authors, it's just not for us. Like, it is for other people to discuss our work and do it. But it was just that moment of, like, some people shouldn't read. Like, they just should not read books. They don't know how to dissect them, they don't know how to talk about them, they don't have the cultural literacy to understand what they are. And it was just a very freeing moment that it doesn't matter what you write, someone's always gonna. So I think about how many like salty 1-star reviews there are on all of my books, and it just gives me life, and I want to write books with even more of them.
Mm-hmm.
More of them.
I'm 100% with you on the pettiness thing. I went to my friend's birthday party just last week, and it was so nice to walk in and people were like, oh my gosh, I heard you have books out, like you're doing so well. I'm like, yeah, and you're still just hanging out on Facebook. I'm so sorry you treated me like trash when we were in high school. I really am.
I find it's a very common thing too with those of us who are like bullied or in the closet for
Yes.
gay in middle school, elementary, middle, whatever, all of public schooling, and then we get older and those people reach out to us and they're like, oh, you're such an inspiration, and I love writing back, you weren't. You didn't inspire me at all. You influenced me, which is I would spend my entire life thinking I'm going to be better than you at everything. Like, love it. I did a whole keynote thing for a school visit that was just about how to use spite in order to succeed. Like, because I'm very much into taking negative, or things that have a negative connotation, like anger. Anger is a gift. I love subverting things that we see as negative. I don't think being spiteful or petty is always a bad thing. Like, there's a way it can actually motivate you to get things done. I think about it every time I write. Like this book, I literally turned in yesterday, like 24 hours ago, my next YA book. I wrote it being like, I want all of these people to hate me. Like, I write a book specifically to make people angry, and it was so fun. It was really fun. What drives and ignites your passion? Mark tells the teenagers to make adults angry.
I don't know, I think there is something to that where when you are queer within the public eye, there is that certain amount of spite. It's equal parts, I think, what you both talked about. It's wanting to reach, even if it's those two people who truly, truly need it, and it will revolutionize the way they see the world that they live in. And it's also making sure that the people who made that world so painful for them, a little bit uncomfy for the first time.
You feel uncomfortable? What that's like?
We wouldn't know.
All right. Okay. I'm gonna venture into Dear Dorothy.
Of course you do.
Dear Dorothy for 200. Oh. right, Julian, I should have listened to you. What might some of your characters say to hearten the queer community in the current cultural climate? Okay, okay. Characters in anger is a gift, they would say burn it all down.
Mood.
Absolutely, just burn it all down. Who cares? Like, oh, everything, these cultural institutions we don't like, burn them down, start them over. Who cares? We don't care. Each of us a desert. I feel like Situ would say, run away from it first. Definitely, because that's literally what she does. Run away from your problems and then find friends along the way. So community. Her big thing is community. She's very isolated. So her thing would be, no matter how terrible things are going on, finding out people who understand you and cherish you and love you is always going to make things feel better. With the insiders, actually very late to my last answer, the insiders are all about these kids using the tools that they have to be very quietly petty. And learning to like use the things they do bad against them, like embarrassing a principal, embarrassing your bully in a very public setting so that he gets in trouble. There's a beautiful heart of pettiness in that book. And so I think they, what's it called? The characters in the insiders will be all about malicious compliance, which is my favorite form of protest ever. If you don't know what malicious compliance is, I'll give you a great example. There are some kids who are doing it currently right now in Florida because of that Don't Say Gay ban. And they have like, you cannot have inappropriate or sexual material in the classroom. So they are currently flooding the report system with all of these straight and Christian books that technically violate the ban. And now these school boards are overwhelmed by like 30,000 things saying we can't read the Bible anymore because it's full of sexual acts and violence. They've done like Catcher in the Rye. All of these classics are now, we can't read them. And because of the way they set this law up, they have to review every single one. And so I'm in touch with this teacher right now who's like, we have one book we can teach, and they're panicking because we've had to pull literally everything off the shelf. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, I love Pettiness so much. I love it so much. So malicious, the characters in the insiders, they would be malicious compliance is how you deal with bad faith actors. That's my love it.
While I'm sitting here thinking, well, gosh, do my characters even fight against anything? I think the kids in the Summer of Everything, they would organize wholeheartedly. They would be the ones setting up protests. They would be the ones on the front lines. They said, if we can fight to save our independent bookstore, we will save this nation. So I have faith in them. The characters of Runner of Lions, listen, I don't,
There's like 10 hippos in Running.
Yeah, I mean, like,
let's go to the lane.
Yeah, they're great.
I think, it would be
They
like
would be passing out snacks at the protest. I think definitely in Right Where I Left You, I don't know, I feel like Isaac and Diego would be the first to say that, as bleak as it can be, sometimes it really just takes one person to start the revolution kind of thing, because that's how they see it. They, being queer teens of color, they don't have that representation everywhere to see that they can be the hero, they can do it themselves. And so I think it'd be first to say, well, if no one else will do it, we'll do it, kind of thing. And so I love that about them. And I don't know, Remy. Remy's a hot mess. He would just say that sometimes life is hard, sometimes it doesn't go the way that we want, sometimes we are faced with adversity, but adversity does not equate to our ending. It doesn't mean that we can stop existing. It doesn't mean that our numbers are suddenly going to drop off. It doesn't mean that we aren't all here, and he's very much here. So I think that's what he would say, is that we have to continue on. As hard as it can be, we've seen hard before, we thought that was the worst. And then we made it through that. And now we're here, and we think it's the worst again. But what happens when we make it through this too? And I think that's kind of his stance on things, is that you can see how bad things can be, but also we can see how great it can be once we just take on it. So, yeah. But I'm all with the kids for Summer of Everything, like organize. Get together, pull your community together, and end it all.
Okay.
End it all.
End it all. Oh, it's my turn.
It is your turn.
I will do Dear Dorothy 400. I know, you've inspired me.
$500 question. Oh my God. How can aspiring queer authors avoid falling into heteronormative writing tropes? Or does that not
Or does it
matter?
matter?
You gotta answer first.
Heteronormative, I don't know that word. Use it in a sentence. You know, honestly,
Monster trucks. Married with children. I can't even think of straight things. Like, that's okay.
That's a problem.
Yeah. Those are good ones.
No, Monster Trucks is definitely a good one.
The show Married with Children was very straight, right?
Yeah, all of those ones from the 80s and 90s were just like, husband hates wife,
Listen.
but they kind of get along.
These shows
So
do
don't
not
write
hold
Married
up.
with Children.
Or Friends.
Thank you.
We did not talk about that.
Controversial.
I have gone to
I don't
knock
get
down,
friends.
drag out
I don't get friends.
debates with my friends.
I don't
about
get friends.
this.
I'm sorry.
I think the thing is when you're going and writing a story, especially as a queer person, is your first instinct is to write to the things that you've been shown your whole life, which is normally something that's heteronormative. And you're almost scared that who you are doesn't fit into that, so you can't write it that way. But I say, damn it all, write what you know. And if that is your truth, if that is your how you've honestly felt or how you things that you've honestly experienced, write it, because there are going to be so many people who relate to it. I'm going to be fully honest. Going in with Running with Lines, I felt like I did have to write to that. I felt like I had to write the gay version of whatever a popular straight book was out at that time. And like midway through, it was just like, it really just felt like I slapped queer on this straight thing, and it does not feel authentic to me. And so from there on out, I always knew I was going to speak to the honest experiences that I've had and the things that I've felt, and the flood of queer people who said, "Oh my God, I've never seen it like that. I didn't know that I could relate to someone like that. I didn't know someone else was out there like me." It makes a huge difference. So I think just being honest with yourself, this is who you are. It's not a bad thing. Just because the world doesn't show you the representation that reflects who you are doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. So write to that.
That was a really good answer. And I'm sitting here thinking, I love that you put that second question in there, because it actually makes it a lot harder to answer in this really interesting way, because I think, yes, we don't want to fall into tropes that are harmful, but that doesn't mean a heteronormative trope should never be used. And in particular, I agree with you. And I give this advice too, which is just don't write a book thinking am I going to get called out on Goodreads? Because first of all, you are. It doesn't matter. You could write literally the most perfect book, and someone will be like, page 13 didn't turn correctly. 2 stars. We've all seen the bad Amazon review. That is Goodreads too. Just people will complain about the most bizarre things. So you can't control it. So I tell people, write the story you want. Write the story that you are the only person in the world who can tell. I think when you should start thinking about this is when you are giving your book to your friends and being open to receiving feedback. When you get to the editorial stage, if you do actually, your book gets sold and you're in that process and your editor pushes back, being able to receive the the constructive criticism, but also be able to engage enough to know whether you do need to push back and be like, but this is my life. This is actually how things happen. This experience with coming out, this experience with dating, any of these things, this is very real. How can I also write it so it's very clear that this is an individual experience? I'm not writing to represent every human being under this queer spectrum or whatnot. So, yeah, I agree with you that I think the first, just write it. You as a queer, just do it. Because there are more of us than there ever have been, but there's still too few of us. And I just want people to have the confidence to feel like they can create. And then I think it's in later periods of the editing that you can start thinking about, what kind of story am I telling? Because that's a beautiful thing. I teach this constantly when I do school visits, is I think we were all taught, because of how schooling worked, that you turn in a project and it has to be perfect. That's your grade, that's your get on it. And unlearning that as a writer is the #1 hardest thing, because you always think, I mean, it's absurd because we're not turning in our books to our editors being like, hope I get an A. But guess what? In our hearts, we are. Like, that's what we're thinking. But the thing is, one of the things that I have let go of over the years is you're turning it in so that you can then work in a collaborative state with someone else to get it to the A. You do not have one opportunity to get it right, and that's it. It will go, I mean, Anger is a Gift, the published version is draft 38. Like 30, I got to edit that thing 38 times before it went public. I love that. I never got that many after that because once you're in publishing, it moves a lot quicker, but you have opportunities to change things and rethink things and rewrite a book and reorganize it and all of that. So at the beginning, just write the book, write the story, write the play, write the screenplay. Think about those other things a little bit later. Don't get too in your head, I would say.
Very nice. Yeah, I feel like there is like a certain power to taking like traditional, like heteronormative stories, especially like all these fairy tales that we've all grown up with, and then putting the queer spin on them to be like, hey, here's a version that you can see yourself in.
Or the romantic comedy, Julian Winters.
I don't know anything about that.
But yeah, you're right. There is some power to taking a very heteronormative thing and being like, fuck yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Way to go, Jim.
I'm so proud of you.
Okay. I was like, to choose. We haven't done.
I do want to go on a tangent really quick though, because
Yes.
you mentioned Goodreads a couple times, and I feel like you need to yell about it a little bit more.
No, I'm good. This is not a good
Because I
read.
do find it shocking when I go on there and I see someone like just giving the most vehement review they can, and I'm like, do you know the author can see this? Like, are you comfortable with branding yourself as like this person who hates their book?
And it's interesting because generally, and I have unfortunately met someone who was a 1-star, this is the worst book I've
Really?
ever read, in person, and they told it to me, to my face, and I was like, first of all, like, if you're on Goodreads, it's fine, I cannot go on Goodreads. The next level up is when you tag me on Twitter or Instagram, and I'm like, I get that notification. A lot of people don't. They think we get so many, we don't see it.
Oh.
And I have to remind them, I'm like, yeah, but you tagged me at 3:34 a.m. on like a Tuesday, so you're the only notification that I have. And then the last step was, it was at, what was that big convention that used to be in New York for books?
BookCon.
It was at BookCon, and it was a girl who was in my line to get a signed book. And she was just, I just want you
that
to
she
know.
hated.
Correct. And she tells me, like, I really want to, I'm getting this signed for a friend, even though I was like, no, you're not. This is for you. And she was just like, but I just didn't really like it. I was like, okay, thanks. And then she just kept going. And as she's like spewing it out and I'm like signing the thing or whatever like that, I handed the book over and I said, you could have not said any of that. And it was wild to watch her realize that was actually an option and it probably never occurred to her. So I actually think for a lot of people, because being online, you just can say, I think people don't understand restraint. And that you just don't, I see this all the time. One of my favorite things to use in my group chat, I have this one little meme image and it says, we should know less about each other. And that's really how I feel about most things on the internet, is I feel like we have gotten to a point where there are too many things on the internet. So, should you have your discourse? Yes, I don't believe we should ever get to a place where people should not be able to talk about books. Do you need to write 75,000 words about how this is the worst book in the English language?
Maybe they're just trying to get a job. They're hoping that some reviewer, like company publisher, is going to see them and be like, I want you to read these books.
I just find it so fascinating, that part. That's the part I find so fascinating,
Yeah.
is the ones that will go online and show themselves to the public. And then, think like people don't understand how deep they kick with jobs and things now. Like you can be fired or not hired, like over you being on Goodreads being racist. What company is going to want you when you're 1-star in every book just because it has a person of color as the main character? It's just like, what do you expect to accomplish?
Who's the one, we turned it into a verb. Who's the person that isn't you've been Johned or you've been Steved? The dude who, if it has a queer character, gives it a 1-star with no review?
I don't know. I know
There's
the
a
ones
person
who
who agrees.
1-star me because, and I'll go look at their other 1-stars, and it's all because I write black main characters, but I don't know about this.
There is. I don't remember this, but we've turned it into a verb. Oh, you've been Steved. Like, that's how notorious this one account is. And I'm just like, why? Like, do you have a friend? Go talk to a friend. I don't always think it always applies, but sometimes the whole insult of like, just go touch grass. I really like it sometimes where I'm just like, go touch a blade of grass, realize there's a world outside of this thing. So, okay. Let's not make this a good read. Yes, okay. We haven't done Buy the Pen. I'm going to go all in. Let's do Buy the Pen for 500.
Are there any genres or stories that you are intimidated by or scared to write about?
Yes.
Yes. Historical fiction.
Oh, yes!
Historical fiction, because the historical fiction girlies will get you for one inaccuracy, and you'll get a 1 star, and everyone in the community will support it. No, I can't go to that route. I have too much anxiety. I don't read a whole lot of it either, so I don't feel like I'm actually well versed in it enough. I think that's a thing that all of us, we can admit, like, I think I just don't have enough talent for historical fiction. I don't. And I can admit that. It's just not where my brain lands. I have read very little of it. It's just not my thing. I would also say, like, military sci-fi, that whole, like, Heinlein-esque realm. In my head, there were just a bunch of old dead white men ghosts, and I don't remember any of their names. I don't know why they're ghosts. Well, they're dead, so they're ghosts. Like, in my head. That realm, no, I wouldn't touch it. I will say I am scared to write a screenplay. And I've been asked, and I was like, I don't know, it scares me. But I'm not saying I will never write one, but that intimidates me a lot.
Yeah, they're intimidating.
Yeah, so that's my answer.
I'm intimidated by everything that's not a rom-com. No,
When is Julian Winters going to write a horror novel?
That I'm intimidated by. I can't write what I can't, like, watch movie-wise. So I can't watch horror movies, so I don't think I have the skill set to tell a scary story. I was asked to do, and I was like, first of all, did you read any of my books? Which made you think I could write horror? But I just can't.
But sometimes that's the fun thing. Like, I got asked to do, it just came out, the All Signs Point to Yes, which was romantic comedies based on the Zodiac. I don't know anything. I'm not a Zodiac, like, I'm not an astrology person. Like, I know some things about it, but if you were like, what are the traits of I forgot the signs. It was Jupiter. I was like, what do they say? The traits of a Jupiter. And I'm like, that's not right, Mark. No, I just don't know anything. But the person asked me because they were like, I want to see you do that kind of like really light, low stakes romance thing, and I want to challenge you. And I ended up really liking the story and feeling like maybe I could do this again. So I could also see someone coming to you and being like, I don't think horror's in your wheelhouse, but I want to see you try it.
Oh, it's definitely happened. Like with Patrice Caldwell and the Eternally Yours anthology is coming out. I've never written paranormal at all, but she's like, I know you can write a paranormal romance. So I was like, well, I can write a romance.
Did you?
So yeah, I did.
What did you choose?
Oh,
Can you say?
No, yeah, I can say. I mean, the book comes out in September, so
Okay.
if I can't say, we're in trouble. I wrote one about an angel. I wrote one about a guardian angel. And it was a lot of fun because I kind of cheated because I did like part romance but part coming out story, which I had never done. I feel like all my books, every character was out. So it was a lot of fun to do. So I can do stuff like if someone challenges me on something I haven't do, I can do. But if it's something I'm actually terrified of, I can't. So I can't write horror.
Was this D. Steele fanfic turned real?
Tell us.
Let me tell you, I did find some inspiration in that. From in the very beginning section, my main character kind of goes off on how I know how y'all think angels are supposed to look and supposed to like things are supposed to happen because of X, Y, Z.
Wait, time out. Is this a biblically accurate angel in your story?
Not at all.
Oh God, I have a project that has not. My agent's like, not yet. That is a biblically accurate angel, and it's more on the horror end. And I want it to be real so bad, but my agent is like, please write other things. This is a lot. But I was obsessed with it as a young kid, indoctrinated in a really weird Christian cult. Read my next YA book. We were taught that angels were not these heavenly loving beings, that they were these almost like horrible monsters with like 50 eyes and like wings on every, like, You were supposed to be terrified of angels.
Mhm.
And then as I got older and exposed to literally any other human in this country, people were like, we love angels, I have a guardian angel. And like the idea, so as a kid, a guardian angel was terrifying to me. It was this horrible monster with 50 eyes who could see you when you touched yourself at night and was going to send you to hell. Like, don't shake your head, I know. No. So I wrote a story idea with a biblically accurate angel, and it is the proudest thing I've ever, but it is weird. Great, yeah. I'm not intimidated by that, by the way.
I am intimidated though to write mystery, because I don't think I have the skill set to like put in red herrings and like wrap everything up and like that. I really want to, but I don't think I have the skill set yet to go through that many. Like I need the string to connect everything, and I don't
Let me
think it
just,
works out.
my next YA book has my first like mystery-esque plot, like a thing that's unknown that your teeth. It was, don't do it, Julian. It's so hard. It's so hard.
See?
Part of what is hard about this, if you read mystery too, what is fun about a mysterious element, like when you think about shows like Lost or Fringe, where there's a long-going storyline, and how do you keep that mystery going, is that the people who like those things are so savvy. And when you are the writer, you have to think, is this clue enough, or is it too
outsmart
much?
them.
And how do you outsmart it? But you also have to write a story so that if someone figures it out, it's still a good book. That's the key to it, really. And that is the hardest part. Is it still has to be good, even if someone figures out what it is. And I will say that the secret I figured out, thanks to Tiffany Jackson, who's not here, but Tiffany Jackson, one of my favorite people on the planet, is that if you do that, you have a second twist that is never telegraphed, that hits them like a truck. That's the trick to it, is so that even if they figure it out, then they feel so confident that they figured it out, they never see the other thing coming from the other side. All of Tiffany Jackson's books are evil, by the way. I love that so much. So, God, that was a good question.
Very insightful.
Yeah, I was going blind date. I just didn't know what we've already chosen. 400? Let's go 400.
We haven't done.
All right, what have you accomplished recently that you are proud of or impressed by?
This is a positive question.
I wish I could say I feel positive about myself. What have I recently accomplished that you are proud of? Okay, two things. I am really proud of my next YA that's coming out in January, because I went in with this idea of a book. And I kind of went a little left field, but I went left field in a way that I always wanted to, but didn't think I could. So I'm really proud of that. I'm also terrified now, because once you feel really good about something, that's when it all goes down. So maybe everybody's going to hate that book. I am impressed by myself because I wrote a terrible first draft. I am the student who goes into every project feeling like I have to have an A. So I stress so hard when I turn to my stuff to my editors. But I wrote a really, really messy adult rom-com. And I'm proud of I'm impressed because I finished it, because it took so long. And it's terrible when I have to revise like crazy now. But I'm impressed that I did that, because I've spent so many years writing YA now. I didn't know if I could go somewhere else.
I am a book writing machine. I've discovered that's my superpower, and I guess it's good. I'm proud of just like the level of output. I've written 4 novels in the last year. Don't do it. It's not worth it. No. So that, but also, I would say the most recent thing, literally 24 hours ago, I turned in my next YA book. It's called Into the Light. It comes out in March of next year. It is the most ambitiously weird structure to a story, because it's told in 2 present tense characters, and then there's this weird flashback thing. And the structure of it was so hard to pull off. I had to rewrite it 3 times in order to get it right, because it was so complex to pull off what I was attempting. But I had my idea in this head of this thing I wanted to do for years. And thankfully my editor, Miriam Weinberg at Tortini, was patient enough to walk me through trying to nail this thing. And it was great too, because I now have to give a whole lecture on this too, but the thing that sort of unraveled it in the best way for me is she kept always coming back to this point of, who is this book for? And I think think it took this last draft to finally nail down who the book is for, because it often comes down to what is the heart of a book. And so I'm very proud. I pulled off this last revision in like 3.5 days, and I was up to like, we don't have to talk about that. It was a lot. It was very stressful, but I feel very confident that what I turned in, you know, there's little tweaks we can do, but I think I finally told the story that was in my head. So, Into Light, out March 28, 2023. Very excited. Very nice. There's a cover. I haven't seen it yet. I'm excited.
All right. Next up.
Do we do blind date for 500?
Mm-hmm.
Ooh, I'm going big for all of these. And getting no points.
Audience question.
Oh! Wait, I didn't know these were a thing. Yeah. You did tell me. Never mind, you did actually. Never mind.
So, does anyone have the question that kind of falls underneath blind date? Doesn't really have to. We can
Any burning question, desires,
raise your hand.
1-star Goodreads reviews.
Shout it to the rooftops.
I know you got it. There
we go.
So you talked about the books. Did you ever find one who was truly repentant, and there was redemption? Both of you mentioned the movie, so.
Because I remember all of them by name.
Oh, I remember all of that.
But one that was really, you felt, man, this person really means, I'm sorry.
No. All of them tried to do the oblivious thing. Like when they reached out, they think like, how are you doing? What's going on? And in my head, I'm like, you terrorized me for 60 years. Like, why are we saying hello? Like, what, you know? No, no, oh my God, I never thought this. No, not a single one of them was ever repentant. With one exception, one of the ones who did find me on Facebook, it took multiple back and forth for them to be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have treated you that way. Like, that was like the most I ever got. Most of the other were just oblivious. They just were like, and I think here's a thing that's interesting too. I think a lot of people don't remember that they were bullies. I think that they, you know, like one of my big ones, who I may have named an entire character over me, I'm sorry. He was oblivious. He did not get it at all. When I told him, like, you were terrible to me, he's like, I remember us hanging out all the time. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, technically we did. You are correct. We were in the same class. Your friend group was next to mine. Your friend group used to throw me in trash cans, though. So I guess I was hanging out around you, just covered in garbage. Like, I have a very different memory. And so he genuinely didn't remember any of it. So he never apologized for anything, because he's like, that wasn't what I remember. And I'm like, well, of course it wasn't what you remember. You were the extremely popular skater boy kid who all the girls loved. Like, and it was also that thing where you weirdly almost idolized your bully because you wish you could be like them and be popular like them. So it was that thing where I also, sadly, constantly tried to be their friend and like, well, if I'm nice to them, maybe they'll stop treating me bad. That never works. Doesn't work. Don't do that. Run away. Doesn't happen. So no, I don't think any of them were ever remorseful to my face. Maybe they've now, hopefully through therapy, they went to church, they figured it out. But no, they never told me. Don't laugh at that. It was like,
I'm laughing at that with the church.
Yeah. You need to see Jesus if you're really fun.
No, but yes.
I want your answer too, by the way. Okay.
No, because I can't recall them directly saying, I treated you like XYZ, or bringing up specific examples. Yes, because I felt like, and no, also because I felt like they were a bully because their friends were bullies. So they were that person in the group who did whatever it was so that they weren't picked on. So they were a bully, but a bully by association, I don't know. But that person, as we've become adults, has tried exceptionally hard to be supportive, to talk to me like I'm a normal person, to exist in my life and be around, and I have forgiven. Just because I have so many things already inside. I don't have space to carry that around too. I don't have space to carry around something else. I mean, the world is on fire. I don't have space for you specifically to drag me down when I'm too worried about the people in charge pulling me down. So, yes, in the sense that they've tried, and I've, okay, if we see each other, I will be cordial, I will not avoid you, and you will put your best foot forward, but know that they haven't like specifically apologized for things.
I like no.
Okay. Similar to that, I reached a certain point in my life where I just was no longer giving people the space or the time that they didn't deserve to have anymore. Which is why, like, I have the contact with the friends that I had from high school, and that's it. And everyone else, I'm like, I don't need you on my timelines. You can go. I don't need to see your face and have these memories. So I think if I didn't give them the opportunity because I didn't want to give them that power over me anymore. But I will say, one of like my best friends in high school who was also my bully, and I didn't realize that until much later in life, I specifically told him that he needed to apologize to me for how he treated me. And he kind of did and kind of did, and I was like, that's fine. It wasn't for me to hear anything from you, it was for me to tell you this, and then to be done with it. Because yeah, I reached that point where I was like, these people don't need to have power over me anymore. I have the people who are important to me, and I am moving on with like the existence and the life that I have.
You have no power over me. I love that labyrinth quote.
On the flip side, I will also say, I have been saving a character name for like the right time when I find like this story for her. But I have had a friend since September 1996 from middle school, Laura Adams, who watched me get bullied and immediately made friends with me. And we have never stopped being friends. Like, and so there is the flip side of that. And I want to, some positivity. We're not all doom and gloom up here. But I love that. Like, and I never forgot that. And we became very close friends in high school. I have remained in contact with her. I saw her maybe like 3 or 4 months before the pandemic. She lives in Australia now. Has the cutest baby. But she came over with her husband and like was like, I'm gonna be in New York. We have to hang out. And we had the best time. And I love her to death. Like, and so I remember that too. I remember the people who watched me get bullied and were like, it wasn't that they didn't do anything. It was like, I'm gonna even aggressively be your friend, like be even more aggressively your friend. And I always remember that.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I know you guys aren't here to hear me talk, but I want to give some more hope on that note with high school and bullies and that kind of thing. So I went to a private Catholic high school.
Oh boy.
Yeah, K through 12. Lots of religious
trauma. All of it? The whole time?
All of it, the whole time. We won't touch on that. But I will say now, the sheer number of queer people who are the only ones who I am still in contact with or like on socials with is insane. And I'm like, I love this. I knew that you were one of the ones I was like, I do keep on seeing your face, and it's because we're family. Like, so that was like a really...
Maybe this is a Dear Dorothy thing. We'll say this is a special Dear Dorothy answer to that question. I remember a thing I kept hearing all the time when Anger is a Gift came out, which is why are there so many queer friends? It's not believable that there'd be so many kids who are also queer who are friends with one another. And I was, first of all, that means you've never been to Oakland. The book is set in Oakland. It is a very Oakland-specific thing based on literal children I met. Like, they are all composites of different children I met. And the children I met, their friend group was like 30 or 40 kids who are all queer, like huge. Like, and it's not to say that there's no homophobia in Oakland, but it's like, it's the Bay Area. There's just a different cultural thing there. That friend group is also based on the group of friends I had in college, where at the end of our freshman year, one of my friends pointed out that we were every letter of the alphabet. And we did not do this on purpose, we just became friends, but it's that thing of we find each other.
Yeah.
We always find each other. The people I have kept in touch with since high school, I would say 90% of us came out after high school. We all knew. So every time I hear that, I'm just like, oh, you just don't know queer people. Because we're like wolves, we're like a pack, but we're just quiet. Well, let me back out of that.
We're like
Sometimes we're very
lions.
loud. Our dinners are very loud whenever we...
That's
fine. Anyway. Is it your turn?
Yes, because you went big.
I don't even know what's left.
Dear Dorothy's left. I know that much. I think Dear Dorothy 400 is not taken.
I think that might be, yes, another audience question.
Oh.
Fire them away.
Do it. Peer pressure.
I'll say with the bullying kind of space, what grace do you give to the bully though, in the respect that if we know we were kids and we know how kids can be, now that we're adults, we can look back over our life, what type of grace do you give, even though, because all kids in some respect get bullied, like in terms of the the duration or how bad it may have been is one thing, but what level of grace are you giving to people who may have forgotten at a time that was maybe 15, 20 years ago?
I think, I mean, obviously it's going to depend on the person and the situation. But for me personally, I've given that grace to one person. And that's because I do feel like their interaction since those days has been genuine. I don't feel you should do anything that is going to compromise your mental or emotional health. So I know there's this whole forgive and forget. I don't feel that you have to. I think it's good to forgive in order not to take up space inside of you, but at the same time, it's not mandatory. You don't have to do these things. You don't have to give grace to anyone who has harmed you in any way, shape, or form. And I think that's important for people to know because it's constant. I talk about it in Right Where I Left You, like the whole time his family is constantly on him to forgive his father for cheating on his mother and then kind of like abandoning family. And it's like, but you don't have to make that space for someone who harmed you because it was their job not to do that. So, like I said, it depends on the person, the situation, but I also just want to reiterate, it doesn't have to be done if it's not something you feel needs to be done, or if it's not something that you are at the point where you get to decide when, where, and how it happens. Yeah.
I think I extend grace in my writing. I think that's where I do the work to extend grace to people, to understand them, because I think that's where you can actually analyze a person and what they did to you in a way that actually feels really safe, because you don't have to do it to their face. So I don't think that I personally extended grace to when I think of my two major bullies that I have in my head, and they were both in middle school. One of them was so oblivious that it was hard to extend grace because I'm like, you just don't remember any of it, and you think we had this grand time and we were great friends, and I'm like, you tortured me, you were terrible. But I explore that characterization, like the person, I base the character off of him in The Insiders, and there is a level that, it doesn't go super far, but it does go into trying to understand why is it happening. And there's a scene that I actually really loved writing between the main character who's getting bullied and his abuela, where she starts talking about here's why some people act this way. Sometimes they do this because that she teaches them what projecting is. When you're going through a thing and it's the thing that's wrong with you, so you put it on someone else that is not doing that thing at all. And she talks about some people are confused, and when they get confused about who they are, they see people who are certain and sure of themselves, and they lash out at them. But even in the book, she ultimately is like, we can understand this, but the more important thing is you need to feel good. You need to feel good, you need to feel safe, that's the more important thing. But I do like in books getting to sort of peel back the layers. I feel like for me that's my second book, Each of Us a Desert, is full of just nasty, messed up. There is not one character who's good, in a traditional sense, maybe one or two people, but most of the people are just so messed up and complicated, and I loved getting to write that, which was, let me just extend grace to everyone. And so hopefully by the end of the book, even the people who do things that are pretty despicable, you have a sense of why they did it and why in their brains that was the best decision to make. So I think in my books, I tend to extend, that's where I practice grace. And then in my personal life, get there. I have that little petty heart that still is but I want to be better than you. But you can do both. You can extend grace to someone and then also be like, I want you, every time you Google me, you're full of flames and fire. Naturally, it sounds very compatible. Next question. Wait, whose turn is it?
Yours.
Do we have any buy the pens left?
I think we do have 500 left.
No, I think we do that. Wait, click on it. I think that was the free question.
No, that was on a blind date.
Yes,
Oh,
we
yeah,
did that.
we did
Yeah,
that.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
Here, you just want me to go through the by the pens and see which one we missed?
Three or 200, one of those?
I think I did 300.
We did 300 to start. That was our big
That was
opening.
the big opening. Way to go.
Here we go. How does romance fit into the structure of your writing? So, do you start with the romance? Do you start with the story, and then the romance finds its way into it? Another avenue?
Oh boy. and some of you who know spoilers of my book, you're probably already very angry right now. There is, without spoiling, there is a stilted romance in my first book. Second one, the romance didn't exist until like the third draft at all. In fact, the character wasn't even there. It was never planned. And that came about from my editor being like, I think the main character needs someone her age on her journey. And she was like, she's isolated at the beginning, but technically, even though you have a lot of people around her, she's still isolated at the end. And she's like, it feels weird. Like, she's like, it was very much that what's the light at the end of the tunnel for her, for people her age. And then once I stuck this other character next to each other, I was like, oh, they need to kiss. Like, it was just literally came, I was like, oh, it was not planned at all. My next YA book, it's not a romance, but there's like spiciness. And it was deliberately I actually didn't want it to be a romance because it's about a character who's very repressed, learning that they are allowed to experience love that is positive, as opposed to love that is controlling and regressive, and it's them meeting someone. So they don't have a romance, but there is a moment where that he is experiencing positive feelings and doesn't know what to do with them because he's only experienced the negative side. So there's no romance in The Insiders. My first actual romance is my next book out in September called You Only Live Once, David Bravo. And that was planned from the beginning. And it's a middle grade romance, which is really, really hard to write. Because it's an age, my characters are 11. And so romance for an 11-year-old is not like romance for an adult at all. Not only literally, like, logistically, in terms of what you can put on the page, but thinking like, trying to remember what it was like when you had a crush and that terrible fear of like, that many of us still have, but I think there's something when you're that age of just, how do you communicate crushes at all? Which is you don't tell anyone ever, again, ever at all, at all. And then on top of it, it also being a queer crush, and that extra layer of like, there is a chance that this person is just straight, and it's never gonna work out. But then what if it's also your best friend who you've been with your entire life? So it's just layer after layer of this stress on this poor kid, David Bravo, who is the biggest mess of a character I've ever written in my entire life. Like literally he makes a mistake in like the early chapter and then comes home, lays face down on the floor and tells his dad to build a bridge over them and they'll sell tickets. And you can come see the boy who died and now has a bridge over him. And he's like, fill it with koi fish. And like, that's how messy this character, I love him so much. But yeah, that was the first time that the structure was deliberate from the very beginning. I've always just, the romance was always accidental or inspired later. I think because all three of my YA books are so intense, I really want my fourth one. I think I want to do a romantic comedy. I've never done an explicit romantic comedy from beginning to end. And I got jokes. I feel like I could put them in a book. So I will be talking to you too, because I have a vague idea of one right now that's kind of funny. But I want to do it, but so how do you do it? Tell us how you, give me a lecture right now. Alan, let's go. I want to know.
First of all, crushes on best friends. I think I know a little bit about that.
I was about to say, we have
oh boy, really need to stop writing about that. How does romance fit? Okay, so true, like full disclosure, all of these wonderful books I've written, the idea always starts with the kissing scene. That is just how I roll for some reason. Every idea like springs from that. I think it's because, again, growing up, the representation that I saw on TV or in movies did not make it look very positive for me falling in love. So it starts from there, and then I get like real philosophical and really deep, but it's always the case. So for me, it works in the sense that I feel like sometimes when you're telling a story, I think this goes back to what you're saying about Each of Us in the Desert, you need to have other people on your side, and that can come in many forms, whether it's platonic, romantic, familiar, whatever it is. And I tend to gravitate to all of those because I, in my experience in life, felt at one point or another, those were the things that saved me. And I hate to say, being in love saved me, but it did. It did. It made me believe in myself. It made me feel like I was worthy. I was valid. I was somebody. And, you know, the breakup was terrible. But that's fine. I, you know, walked away knowing that I was always that person. I just needed someone to remind me. And so that's kind of how the romance fits in there for me. It's an element of the story, I feel like, but the more books I write, the less I lean on the romance being the story and more of being a part of my main character's journey because, I mean, let's be honest, romances are great. They can also be tough once you hit the after part. And I don't want to ever disillusion my reader into thinking like, this is the one thing that makes Isaac great, or, you know, Remy falling in love is how he discovered who he is, and now he is on his way to being the President of the United States. No, that's not how it works. So for me, it's built into the structure that I want people to understand that's a beautiful part of your life that you can experience and that you should be able to see and read about and not feel like it's being shunned or being shifted over to Hulu because it's not Disney Plus content. But at the same time, and they bring it to Disney Plus, and what do? They cancel it. So at the same time, like, it's very much a part of my story. It's always where my story starts, but I also understand that it's just a part of the journey. It's not the full journey. So that's how I build into my structure, is understanding it's a wonderful element that gives me ideas, but it's not the whole thing.
Yes, lovely, thank you. I have not a follow-up, but something that came to mind during that. How do you feel, I'm sorry, this is another deep one, not like hurtful deep, but like you're
Are you sure?
I'm sure. How do you feel that you have been able to see yourself and understand yourself after having written? So like before, I know, sorry, it came pop into my head, I'm gonna say it. So before you were a writer, or you had something that was like real and true and like a complete novel, how did you see and understand yourself before that versus after that? Because I feel like so much of authorship is putting yourself onto the page, and I feel like it's very cathartic and very, I can't find the word, but a really good way to explore yourself and understand yourself.
No, okay. I had a conversation with my therapist earlier this year, which is that I feel like each book was like a different class of therapy that I graduated from. Like, I feel like Anger's a Gift was for me to talk about specifically complex PTSD and how it relates to police violence. Each of Us a Desert is a giant, fantastical metaphor for being in the closet. Like, it's not about being in the closet at all. Like, there's this in a world where there's no homophobia, everyone's out, it's fine. But it's about that loneliness and isolation where you see everything great happening outside your door, but you can't go out there because you're so afraid of what's beyond. And so for me, which is wild, because I wrote the book in 2017 and it came out in September 2020, so the pandemic already happening, and so many people were like, oh, this is about being isolated during COVID, and I was like, no. Sorry.
That's not how publishing works.
No. Well, also someone was like, it just feels like such a prophetic novel, and I was like, could I prophesize myself winning the lottery? Like, well, I don't want to prophesize a global pandemic. I hate that. I feel like, you know, The Insiders was what if your immediate family supported you. And I found that book really healing to write because it's all a power fantasy. It's all me just imagining, what if I could come out to my parents at 8? What if I could have just had that sort of support, and then when things got difficult, I could find people, either these magical kids through this closet, or my, you know, abuela, or my parents who were just like, we're gonna figure this out together. And so I feel like each book allowed me to understand myself. I will also say that there is a part of my childhood I deliberately refused to write about, and it's this next YA book. I felt like I had to level up as a writer in order to pull it off, which is I think also why it took me rewriting it fully for 3 times, is here's a part of me that is like, there's a part of me that is nervous about it coming out that I haven't been before, because while each of these books have a part of me in it, I wrote the story so far away from my experience that it's just like, you can just see glimpses of it, or like this moment, whereas this next book is like 90%. And I'm like, I'm glad I don't read it, because like, someone's gonna be like, I hated this book and I hate what happened. I'll be like, well, you hated what happened to me then. Like, I don't know how to tell you, like, you know. And so trying to separate the two of them. But, so for me, it was like, I feel like I've been gradually building to this point in my career where I feel like I can write about a thing that I experienced. And writing it was very healing and very, it goes like sort of with the grace question. It is a way for me to just dig into something I went into and try to understand it from all sides and trying to understand something. And so I feel like, you know, we hear this a lot that like reading a book can be a great act of empathy, but I actually think writing can be one too, which is I'm always trying to understand all the characters in my book. Why do they make the decision that they do? Even if we hate them, I still want you to get why they're doing it. You can hate the reason why, but I want you to know what it is. So I would say that's what it does for me.
This does feel deep, because I want to be vulnerable. Before
Be vulnerable.
I'm gonna be honest, because I feel like these are moments where you can help someone else out. So before I started writing, I was really depressed. I was lonely, not like physically. I had people around me. I'm close to my family. I have a great group of friends, but I was lonely, and I could name every bad thing that happened in my life, but could not recall any of the great things that happened. And I felt like I was going through the motions. I didn't have the purpose or the one I was looking for. And so writing changed a lot of that, because it has helped me look back at times in my life when the great things happen, and I get to write about those things, and I get to talk about the family and the found family and everything that I've had that gets lost when you're constantly in this sea of I'm unhappy or things aren't going the way I want them to go. So writing helped me to do that. It helped me to process a lot of things, whether it's an unhealthy relationship, or times where I made mistakes and could not forgive myself for being that person. I feel like writing helps you do that, because it helps you to see that you are human. You made a mistake. It's okay. You can move past this. But I couldn't unlock those thoughts until I started writing, and I started exploring things that happened, and started to see that not all the bad things made me a bad person. They're just things that I experienced. It's just part of the journey. And so writing helped me to deal with that. Writing also helped me to understand things like love, and its importance in my life. It also helped me to be a lot more selfish with my time, because I would give everything to everyone else, never giving anything to myself. And writing forced me to sit down and give to myself to pay a bill, but also just to get it out, and to understand that it's okay to take it selfish. It's just okay to go after your passion, and not feel like you're leaving anyone else behind by doing that. And my writing just unlocked so much joy for me, because I felt like growing up it was stripped away so much by the experiences I had in high school, the books I was made to read in high school, the way that we've treated queer people and people of color throughout history, all these things that just continuously, whether they're openly done or like done in secret, they continuously strip away at your spirit. And I think if you're a creative person at any form, whether it's writing, whether it's music, poetry, whatever it is, don't be afraid to jump in and do it for yourself, because it can be so therapeutic. And while it may not be something you pursue for the rest of your life, it's important to get back that moment, get back that piece of yourself that everyone else is taking from you.
Can I add it? Can I give you a great moment?
Yes.
That if you need to remember later. So I'm going to start off by spoiling it, which is that I once witnessed Julian Winters create a fire hazard. There you go. I want to say it was 2019. Correct me if I'm wrong, because we saw each other do it. We talked just before this happened. 2019 BookCon, you had a signing at the Interlude Press booth, which was in a weird part of the Javits Center. The Javits Center in New York is designed by David Bowie as a labyrinth. It is the worst designed building on the face of the planet. Like, the first level, the ground floor level, is level 3, I think. And then you go down, and it's like 4, and then you go up, and it's like, what? None of it makes sense. I've gotten lost so many times in there, and when you get lost in there, the only thing you can eat is like one Auntie Anne's pretzel that's been spinning on a booth for like 20 years. It's a nightmare in there. What's important about this, though, is that you did not have a big five, or is it big 4 now?
I don't know how many, but it might be big.
You did not have a major publishing deal. You were still with Interlude Press, which is a smaller independent press. So they were located in an area where, when the authors did signing, because of the way this industry works, we tend to pay more attention to the big authors and the ones at the big houses or whatnot. So it was not built for lines. And I walked in to a couple of the security guards at the Javits Center shrieking at these children of like, why are you standing here? Why are you here? You're blocking, like they were literally blocking the entire entrance to this whole convention hall. And all they kept saying is, I'm here for Julian. And Julian had the biggest line I have ever seen at a small press table ever in the history of BookCon. And you almost murdered all of us. And I think that is a testament to what Running with Lions did. Because no one, including, I know the people at Interlude Press, because they gave it to me early, and in talking to you, none of us thought that book would blow up as big as it did. And you did that. So I'm putting that in your little pile of good things. Please don't cause a fire hazard.
How do you know I wasn't trying to get rid of the competition?
Okay,
It's a competitive
over.
world
Let's
and
see.
publishing. What do you mean?
Julian reveals himself. Arsonist.
Thank you both for being vulnerable. That was very, very nice.
Thank you for these wonderfully vulnerable questions.
Right?
It's been very easy to.
I'm going to give you a fun one because I think the last one we have left is a Dear Dorothy 500, and I know that one's a little rough on the edges.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
so, going to be the bad auntie at the family gathering and say, who's your favorite child? Which of your characters is your favorite?
I have a really unhealthy history with my aunties, so you are fitting right into this.
To give you an idea of like how my cursed, I've been on deadline for 8 years brain worked, is as you said that, I was like, do I have children?
That you've neglected.
My bio, like
This is Jerry Springer. Bring it on.
bring out the children. I mean, I'm very upfront about my favorite child as each of us has easily. I think there's a book coming out that might take over it, but you know, like a lot of people are like, I don't like choosing a favorite child. I'm like, oh, I have a favorite child. And for me, it's because of how ambitious that story is. It's such a personal thing. I always wanted to write a story where like the book opens with something that's going to surprise you in the end. And I love people getting to the end and not seeing what was coming. I'm just very proud of that book and very proud of that character. I wrote a character who's deliberately messy, who opens it with, I messed up and I don't care. Like the opening thing is, I'm telling you why this hot mess of a nightmare happened and I don't care, I would do it again. And I just loved leaning into that character, so Sochio from Each of Us a Desert is my favorite child. So far. Well, I also got to write Nico, and he's my actual son. Like Nico from Percy Jackson, that's my actual son, so we'll talk about that later.
I do not like picking favorites. I love them all so dearly. They've all.
But which one do you love 1% more than the other?
The kids aren't in the room, it's okay.
Wait, let me put this in a way you can understand. All of your children are at the Javits Center, and your fans have caused a fire hazard, and the building is burning down, and you can only pull one character out.
I am picking for my next YA Theo, because the rest of them have lived with y'all for a while now. They had their life. I'm picking, seriously, my next YA Theo, in the same vein as you, I wrote a very messy character who has to own up for things that he's done. He's got to like apologize. He has to not only apologize, but he has to name it and own what he did. And that was really a really good experience for me because I was so messy in high school and I didn't own any. Lied my way through everything. I didn't say it, we have proven. That's not my handwriting. I avoided it all. So I loved him, and I also love, there's a scene, he takes on so much, but there's a scene where he confronts his father about this generational thing they have in their family, about expectations and what it means to carry that and what it means to have to live up to that, and how it's different for him. And I loved writing. It was so therapeutic for me. It's not something I've actually said to my own father, but it was nice to be able to see it for someone else to read, so that maybe one day they'll, confront the adults in their life that didn't think about the actual child first. Because I think that's a tendency that we see a lot where, I don't know if you live in America, where we think about the adults first and not the actual children who have to live through these experiences. And so it was very nice for me to be able to at least speak my piece that way.
Wonderful, thank you. That was a very diplomatic answer. Okay.
Mine wasn't. I love
At all. I love that you did that.
Where are you? There we go. Okay, so this one was sent to us online by one of the people who sent a question
Very
early.
long.
It is a very long question. So, a lot of minority groups struggle to accept or even acknowledge the queer community as
This is rough around the edges. Oh my God.
yeah, I told you, I warned you. As members of both of these communities, what advice would you give to a young POC person struggling with coming out to friends and family members who have voiced negative opinions of the queer community? So how do we address that
I have
intersectionality?
very strong feelings about this.
I do too, and especially someone who grew up non-denominational Christian / maybe a cult, and then by the way, my teenage, this is going to tell you a lot about me. My teenage rebellion was to convert to Catholicism. You were allowed to laugh at that willingly. Yeah, that's where I thought I would be safer as a young queer Mexican. We have a lot to talk about. And so having people who were Latino, who were my best friends, and having to sort of, face up front the legacy of what, for example, the Catholic Church has done to queer people and what they continue to do. It's hard. It is really hard. That's the kind of work that it's, so my immediate answer is there isn't an answer that will solve it. It is, if you believe that this person is worth the work, it's going to be work. Which means that sometimes, and that's the thing, is I think it also goes to your question about grace and forgiveness, is there does come a point sometimes where you do have to cut it off because it is actually not worth it. But I like to try to approach things with good faith and be like, this person is worth it, they genuinely don't get it. They've either been indoctrinated or brainwashed or grow up in a place where they've been taught a thing and it is genuinely very difficult for them to see something outside of it. So I say, if it is a person you believe you can have a long-standing relationship with, like let's say it is a parent, a sibling, it is a very, very close friend, it is going to require a lot of time. And that time is also going to require you to constantly justify just you existing, which is exhausting. So I preface it with that, that's why I give that preface of you have to know that you're going to have to do that sort of thing. So when I think about the friends who have made these turnarounds and the people in my life who have actually come around, to give some context, I grew up in Riverside, California. It's in Southern California, out near the desert. My community voted in the high 90th percentile to ban gay marriage, including my own mother. Whole separate trauma. So I grew up around people who were, I would say, my best friend in the world, and voted against gay marriage. And they were like, oh, but it doesn't matter. Like, I love you. I'm not homophobic. This isn't an act of homophobia. I love you. You're my best friend. I would never treat you bad. And I was like, but you just did. How do you not like? And so that's a great example, a very specific one that was so hard to deal with, because when Prop 8, which was defining marriages between a man and a woman in the state of California, when it passed, that day after, it was just how many people posting on like Facebook or Twitter being like, why are all my friends mad at me? And they genuinely did not understand. They're like, I just voted because like men and women get married. If you want your thing, go get your other thing. Why does it have to be marriage? And I was like, well, because none of you support the other thing either. Like, you're giving us an option that we don't get to have either. Like, that thing isn't recognized federally. Like, we're trying to get federal protections. Also, I don't know if you know this. Do you know this? straight people have been ruining marriage for a long time. Like, it's been ruined. Y'all, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm looking only at the straight people like, you messed it up. How dare you? But that was one of the many things you sort of have to walk people through, which is, if you believe it is sacred, why are you not going after the straight people who are absolutely corrupting it and making it to be a terrible thing? Why does your focus end on these people? And I will say that the people who came about, it required very minuscule, long conversations deep into the night. And I will say that I personally have appreciated relationships with people where we have these deep discussions. I wouldn't say they ever got to arguments. And people where it gets to an argument, I think that is actually a sign that maybe that person is not invested in trying to learn your perspective. I think you can have deep, difficult conversations, but any of the people I talked to where it just went immediately to argument, I'm like, oh, no, you have no interest in it. So yeah, it takes time, it takes patience, it takes the very hard thing where, and I'm sure you both relate this too, where you are offering the other person grace, empathy, and understanding, and you constantly are feeling like they're not giving it back to you, even though they think they are, and they're trying to. That part is really hard. If you can get to the other side of it, it is incredibly rewarding. Some of the people I know in my life who are I right now immediately thinking of a friend from Riverside who is the biggest, most annoying, aggressive, in-your-face P-flag mom I've ever met. Like, this woman has rainbow everything. I've seen her literally fight fascists, like punch them in the face. Like, and I love seeing that because she often, like, when we catch up and we have a conversation about what's going on in the world, she talks about, like, those conversations with you radicalize me. And I'm so thankful you didn't have to do that. And I'm now, like, as I'm on the other side of it, realizing how much work you put in and how much you believed in me. And like, first of all, she's like, I never want to do that for another person. So she is much less defensive than she used to be. But, you know, I love knowing that the work that I did turned her into this, oh, she's so angry, I love it. She literally punched a fascist in the face. I haven't punched a fascist in the face. Like, she leveled, now I'm realizing she's better than, oh my God. Not a good ally, Julian. How would you answer this question, Julie?
It's a great question.
It's a really good question.
I am on the same tree as you, where growing up as a black person, as a queer person from a very Christian household, there was a lot of this is who you are supposed to be, and that is it. And then I have a nice history of, I spent my childhood growing up in upstate New York, where I was one of 5 black kids in my entire school. So there, it was okay to be queer but not black. Well, then I moved to the South in my teens, where it's like, okay, you can be black but not queer. So it was just like, I had to be one or the other wherever I went. But honestly, as I've grown, my answer to young people is that this is a part of you, and you get to decide who you share with. There is no requirement. There is no mandate. You don't ever have to come out to anyone who makes you feel unsafe, who makes you feel like your existence doesn't matter, who isn't willing to put in the work. And it's their job to do the work, not you. You don't have to do it. You're not going to anyone and hoping that they accept you, because you shouldn't have to be accepted for who you are. It should just be. You should just exist. So I have very strong feelings about this, because I hate that we continuously make people feel like they have to come out and they have to share who they are with everyone, or with people in their life that are trying to actively cause them harm, or who are in it, or who are doing it, not like actively doing it, but they're doing it in other ways, in the ways that they vote, in the people that they support, and the things that they allow to be said around people that they know could be queer. You shouldn't have to do that, and it is not your job. If you feel like this person is someone that you love and you feel safe around them, and they haven't shown that they're going to actively bring you harm, then yeah, feel free to share that and ask them to come out to you as straight while you're doing all of that, okay? Because they're not meant to, they don't have to do any of that. So why is it all about you coming out? Why is it all about you sharing? They need to share too. They need to talk about it. But at the end of the day, I just don't feel like it's something you should feel like you have to do as a young person, especially as a young queer person of color. Because as much as I know the world has changed, racism hasn't gone away, homophobia hasn't gone away, transphobia hasn't gone away. These things have not gone away. So don't feel like you need to put yourself in a situation where you're not going to come out on the other side feeling great about your existence.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I'm going to reveal once more how petty, what a little shit I am. I used to do this thing when I lived in the Bay Area, because you mentioned it right now, and it just sparked the thought, which is that when I was at parties and stuff, and someone revealed like their wife or whatever like that, I'd be like, thank you for coming out of the street, that's so brave of you. Because also living in the Bay Area, it was like, you're straight? Right. Who's straight in the Bay Area? Like, that's also, so that's a technique. Just turn around on your, you know, if you feel safe. Don't do that, actually, it's terrible advice. Anyway. What's the last question?
I think there was the last one on here. I'll scroll down really quick.
I don't know what time
it is.
We're almost there.
6:22.
See if there are any last questions from the audience.
Yeah, audience questions.
Can I also give a shout out to you?
Sure.
You wrote most of these questions, correct? They're some of the best questions I've ever been asked in my entire career.
Yeah.
Thank you, Grant. Like, fantastic. Let's give a round of applause for Grant. No. Because your questions could have just been like, how do we write words? Or
Yeah.
I don't know. I was trying to think what's
what
a
do
bad.
you have to
Like,
first draft?
there's no bad questions. We all know that's not true.
Yeah,
Like,
you all know.
but I was like, what's a bad? I was thinking some bad interview questions I've been asked.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just figured you guys have written so many things. You've done the circuits so much before. I was like, how can we make this conversation new?
You don't know how many people don't think that. Actually.
And don't make a game out of it either. My God,
I don't know.
Make it fun for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, we want to have fun.
But yeah, audience questions? Fire away. I'm in front.
What book have you read and want to recommend to us that's coming out?
That's not fair.
My own books, because that's mostly what I've read. Because I've had to edit them 8,000 times. No, that's not true. The Vanquishers by Kaylin Barron, which is Kaylin's first middle grade. It is a story about a world in which vampires used to be around, but they got rid of it. And it is both the most incredible metaphor for like how communities deal with violence, and then it also has this weird vibe where the vampires are like COVID. It's not about COVID, but there's this thing about we think it's coming back. It is so brilliant and never does what I thought it was going to do. It's called The Vanquishers. It's a middle grade book. It's out this year. Incredible. I would also the only things I've read this year are books I've blurbed, like that are coming out in the next 6 to 8 months. So who writes books, June?
It's okay. We can make these kind of more rapid fire.
Yeah.
Sorry, can't think of what I've read like recent. I do know the book I'm still having a book hangover from that did recently come out the end of May, which is Kings of Beemore by R. Eric Thomas, and I highly recommend everyone please read this book. It is Ferris Bueller's Day Off kind of book where these two best friends who are about to be separated because one is moving away decide they're going to hit everything on their bucket list in this 24-hour period, which includes going to Pride, doing these things they never did before, trying to ride in a convertible even though they're like 16, and it's very much it's a book with two queer black boys, and it's so much about their platonic love, which is something I rarely see. As someone who writes like a lot of romance, it's so good to know that you can also find books that speak to the strong bonds of friendship, especially in those formative years.
Very nice. All right, anybody else? I saw more hands. Right there?
If you could write for any IP other than Star Wars and Percy Jackson, what would it be?
I mean, Star Wars was my #1 dream of all time. Yeah, I just tried Star Wars tattoo on my right arm. I mean, the Percy Jackson thing was like a fantasy, but there was no Percy Jackson IP, so you couldn't imagine it because you're like, he writes all the books himself. Why would you ever imagine it? So, what
else do I like doing?
Why do you keep asking me, who am I? Who am I, Julian?
I mean, I feel like every time we talk, you're telling me about some horror movie you watched, so I feel like that would be fun.
I would say, and this is dream and it's never going to happen because I wasn't a published author when they were happening, but my other dream was I always wanted to write like YA X-Files books. And I got to become friends and meet Cami Garcia, who got to write one of them. And they'll never bring those back. Like, it'll never happen.
Who knows?
No, I have been saying, and we're coming up on the 3-year anniversary of Return of the Jedi, is I want to write a middle grade Star Wars book from the point of view of the Ewoks. Because I think the Ewoks are the most underrated characters. They're little fuzzy bears who, like, make sounds. Like, I would write the shit out of that. Is that fun? Okay, sorry. I would write the shit out of that book. Like, and so every time I like meet with my Star Wars editor, I just throw it out, and she's like, okay. Like, there's no interest in this book. Like, no one wants it but me, but I want to write Ewoks so
Keep
bad.
talking about it. Speaking into existence. Subliminal messaging.
Yeah, Ewoks.
To no one's surprise, I want to write for either Marvel or DC. For DC, I have dreams of writing for Aquaman Calderon, the Black Aquaman. Yes, please. And then for Marvel, there's so many I would write for that one. I used to say Wiccan and Hulkling from the Young Avengers all the time, which I still would not turn down. But I low-key want to write his twin brother, Tommy Speed, and is dating Prodigy from the X-Men series, and I would kill to write that. I love that Marvel has given me a black, queer, young hero who's out there now, and yeah, so that's what I would definitely write.
I don't know if this counts as IP, but if I could be added to a show's, like TV show's writing room, Yellow Jackets. I want to write for Yellow Jackets. If you haven't seen Yellow Jackets, it is the most perfect television show on the face of the planet. You don't watch it.
Oh, no. I've heard
handle
you
it.
talk about it. I can't.
It'll
No.
wreck your whole life. Like, there's a scene
Not my
later in
jam.
one of the seasons that gave me nightmares for weeks. Like, it is just incredible. If you haven't seen Yellow Jackets, I would love to write for Yellow Jackets. Putting that out there. Hire me. I've never written a single TV thing ever.
All right, I think I saw maybe 2 more hands out there. Anybody else?
The Yellow Jackets was their answer.
Thanks for that. Okay, we've got 2 minutes left, so we're going to do really rapid fire. Super heavy questions. Pineapple on pizza.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, gosh.
100%.
Mario or Wario?
Mario.
Like, who do I want to date, or what?
For discussion, sure.
No, I'm gonna do. I like my man Fix, so Wario.
Okay, and similar vein, Mario Kart main. Who's your main? Who do you pick every time?
So.
I always pick Princess.
Love that. What else I had a list? I don't have it with me. If you had to only eat one food for the rest of your life, what is it?
Hamburger. No questions asked.
Come on, quick. What jumps into
I
your
forgot all foods. I don't remember what food is. A good plate of nachos.
Okay. No cheese or no chocolate?
Like, what's our preference, or what?
No, like if you could not eat one anymore, which one would it be?
No chocolate.
No cheese, which I should be doing because I'm lactose intolerant.
Oh my god.
DC or Marvel?
Marvel.
Both.
Marvel.
Okay. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars. Star Wars. I had more history that I didn't start watching Star Trek.
Okay. Anybody else have any out there?
Yes.
Go
Favorite
ahead.
snack?
What?
Favorite snack?
Oh.
Period, or like when I'm writing?
When you're writing,
Is there a difference for you?
Yes.
I want to hear about what I.
Oh, okay. Well, while I'm writing, it's very specific. I like fries, and I have this ketchup seasoning that I sprinkle on them. So fries with ketchup seasoning. And then for like just in general.
No, we have to stop. Ketchup seasoning?
So I
Like
grew
a-
up in
like a-
upstate New York, and up there we had ketchup chips when I was growing up. and I have not been finding it in the South whatsoever, but I did find online ketchup seasoning, and it's
Ketchup
the same
chips?
thing that they have. Yes, Canadian thing. It's so good.
Is
So
that,
I
like
found
all,
it there.
is that like the all dressed kind of one? No, is that different?
Do not insult ketchup tips like that.
Whoa. Got touchy.
I am very, listen,
Wow, okay.
there are parts of my childhood that I loved that I will hold on to. And then my favorite just regular snack to have is Reese's peanut butter cups.
Okay, my favorite snack, because now I think that I do have a writing snack, and I do have my favorite snack. Because I'm still in 3rd grade. I love apple slices with peanut butter, like just in general.
So good.
It's so good. It's a
So
good
good.
combination. It's also very good for you. You have protein, you have fiber, it's all that. Just stop laughing. But my writing snack, and I actually use it as a reward to train my monkey brain to get things done, is I will get a bowl and I will put 10 peanut butter filled pretzels in a bowl. And when I finish like 500 words, I can eat them. I treat myself like a dog. I do, and it works. I write. I'm a very productive writer, but yeah.
Okay.
Tell us about your books. They're coming out.
Yeah, so we'll transition to that. So what is coming next for both of you?
So my next book is called As You Walk On By. It comes out January 17th.
That's such a good title, by the way.
Listen,
It's so good.
all my editor. Oh, I'm terrible at titles. I have not titled any one of these books. Any of them.
Okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I have not.
I've titled all of mine but one.
I actually did title, I had a title for Summer Everything, but we couldn't use it because it was a small press and I couldn't afford to pay for it. It was Orange Crush and everybody loved it, but we couldn't use it because...
Yeah, because it's a... Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, As You Walk On By comes out January 17th, which happens to be the day after my birthday. Was not planned. I know. Wild. Do not love that for me because now I'm going to be stressed for my birthday. I pitch it as it's the Breakfast Club meets Can't Hardly Wait with a book smart twist. It is about 5 teens who all end up at the same house party. We're all on like a different kind of like the mission for the night. And they all end up in the same bedroom trying to hide from actually completing like their thing. Like one is out to complete a dare, another is trying to come out, another is trying to make his ex-girlfriend jealous. So anyway, they all end up in the same bedroom, and that is their opportunity to kind of learn more about themselves because they're 5 like complete strangers in school, but then they start to learn their similarities, and they also start to find out a little bit about their history with one another that they have to confront. So it's a lot of fun to write. It's got like proposals and all kinds of wild stuff happening. Yeah, I'm looking forward to people doing that. Tell.
I'm going to try to be real quick because I have 4 books out in the next 9 months.
You do.
Okay, September 20th this year, You Only Live Once, David Bravo, Coco Meets Sliding Doors, about an adopted kid who has the worst week ever because of a presentation he gives about being adopted, and he gets made fun of because of it, and accidentally summons a magical creature who can be any animal in the universe, who tells him that he can take him back to one moment in his life to bring him back on the right track and fix his greatest mistake, but every time he does it, he breaks the world. And each time he has to redo something earlier, and you're going to find out why. I love it. Love this book. Don't ever write time travel. It's really hard. March 10th. No, what's 14 minus 28 minus 14?
You're talking to me.
All right.
Sorry, I don't know numbers. I don't know
math.
math. It's 14. Yeah, March 14th. Star Wars Battle for the Arena is my Star Wars book, middle grade, about the angriest Dark Jedi who gets hired to fight in this arena, and someone from her past follows her. Or at least she thinks she does, and she can't tell if she's imagining it or not. It's a middle grade adventure based on a video game that hasn't come out yet, which is why it keeps getting pushed. Which they literally like, here are the characters in the video game, you can make whatever story you want. I cannot believe with what I got away with in this book. Not just as a Star Wars book, but as a middle grade book. Like, I kept being like, can I do this with the Force? I am now there's something with the Force in this book that has never been done, and now it's Star Wars canon forever. I'm so excited. And then March 28th, Into the Light, about 2 boys whose lives are sent into upheaval because they spend a weekend at a Christian camp that they think might be a conversion camp. It's a light journey. It's a light
Yeah,
book.
yeah.
It has my favorite ending I've ever written. like, I think it is the most joyous ending of anything. And I know once you get the book and you read it, you're like, that's joy. I'm like, yes, it is.
For you, probably. So.
Oh, I'm so proud of it. My friend is halfway through it and is like, I genuinely think this is the best thing you've ever written. Like, I just finally nailed it. And then, I almost said the date, almost said the title, then
The Percy Jackson
book. That's all I can say. It comes out after that, sometime. Unlike you, I have named all my books, with one exception. My editor Mirren came up with Into the Light.
I'm going to send you my next one so you can name it.
I'm very good at it. And actually, wild thing, whenever I start writing a project, I give it a title that's like what I think the theme is. And when I started writing a Percy Jackson book, I was like, there is a thing that happens in an early Percy Jackson book, and I was like, I want this to come to fruition, and I want it to be a thing. So I jokingly named the book that, and everyone loved it, and it stuck through. And I just want you to know, the day that this title is announced, the entire Percy Jackson fandom will erupt in flames, because they will all know exactly what moment I'm talking about. I'm gonna break the internet. I'm so excited. Like, just shatter everyone into pieces. Ooh, I'm so excited.
Okay.
We did it.
We did it.
Oh my God.
Everyone give a round of applause.
Thank you all for coming out.
So, if I remember correctly, we have, for anyone who is here, you designed these, if I...
Yes, so we had a snafu. We don't have books to sell and sign, but made little author cards, so maybe you guys can, the librarians here are going to be mad at me, glue them into your personal copies, if you want. And also, right now we have snacks and drinks and hors d'oeuvres and things out there, so if you guys would like to head on out, enjoy that. We're going to give our authors a little moment, and then they'll be out to sign. So, thank you both once again.